What is good, guys?
Hey, how's it going?
Today we are going to be adding another episode to the Forgotten Album series, and this time we are going a little bit more into the future from what we normally have been talking about since we started this whole Forgotten Album series, and we are going to 2006. Now, I have three albums and bands here for you. Now, two of them are from like that time of like the Renaissance of the early 2000s of that second wave of like glam metal or sleaze metal, whatever you want to call it, coming from Europe and Sweden and stuff, which there were some bands from America here too, the USA. But, and then we also have one band that is from the golden era of the 80s of the glam and hair metal and such like that, with one of their releases from 2006 as well. So this is going to be an interesting episode and seeing what kind of stuff was being released when this stuff was somewhat dead and wasn't cool up until about say 2004 2005 from my memory, when it started becoming kind of cool again, like to where you can talk about it and people wouldn't just straight up make fun of you. So let's jump into our first pick here for today, and that is going to be Lynam's 2006's Slave to the Machine. Yes. Now, I remember when this one, when the music video, one of the music videos came out for this, and it was Tanis, I believe, or Can't Change Your Mind, or Change Your Mind was the music video. And now I didn't get this album right away because like it was roughly maybe like a year or two, like around 2008 was when I started really finding out about Lynam and about like stuff on this. And then even like they had a couple like EPs or very independent album releases, like a couple independent album releases before this. So I would say certainly this is the first album that they actually were a part of a bigger label, which is DRT Entertainment, which is like an offshoot of Universal Records. So this is basically their first big time for the time release. And so this album actually didn't do horrible, like what you would think in 2006. So the album did peak at in the top 20s of Billboard's top independent albums, not top 200. But and then also 19 in the Heat Seekers chart as well. So that's pretty cool, for the time being. Like in 2006, like this stuff is just not cool anymore, obviously. And you got other things like metalcore coming around, new metal's like out, but like you had like a lot of like the screamo type stuff and just real heavy metal at the time. And it's just cool to see something like this just you know get a little bit of run. But so you did, like I said, you did have the at least the one music video single that I seen was Change Your Mind. Pretty cool. And it's a three-piece band actually too. So because like I said, I was familiar with Change Your Mind, and then I was the other song that I knew from Lynam was from like their second album, I think, Bling Bling, Waste My Life, which then, because you had a four-piece when they first started, and now the vocalist was David Brown for those first couple releases, and then Jacob Bunton, one of the main guys of the band, originators, and he ended up taking over vocals and still playing guitar because he was the guitarist at first, and then ended up taking vocals over like after the second or third release, if I can remember correctly. But then you have David Lynam as well on drums, and then you have Mark on bass for the most part here. So yeah, let's get us into the track listings here because you do have 12 tracks. Now it is 40 minutes, a little over 40 minutes long, and I will say I could do it without a couple tracks, but generally speaking, you don't have more than two tracks that are over 4 minutes long. So it's most of these songs are pretty quick and to the point, and that's cool, because like when you have anything over really like 11, 10, 11 tracks, it's kind of hard to have like non-filler songs, and all killer. So, but this does a pretty good job of that. There's a lot of good stuff on here. Like I said, the single was Change Your Mind. Slave to the Machine is really cool. Losing Venus is nice. Now, some of these songs were like previously released on their previous outputs, but I'm glad that they just brought over like some of the best ones from their earlier outputs onto this bigger label, bigger album release. And I think it's a good thing. And so, but By Your Side's like a cool little ballad. Sister Babylon's a good rocker. You got Letting Go, which is really cool because like that song kind of reminds me of a Stained, so the band Stained song, like It's Been a While. It kind of gives me a little bit of that feel to it, but just a lot cooler, and you finish off with Never Fade Away and Hate My Generation, which are fine, but they are under the 3 minute marks, both of them. So like you're in and out for the most part. And then also like By Your Side, that song really gives me a little bit like a Weezer feel, but if Weezer had balls to them. And like I'm not a fan of Weezer, but like this song just kind of like reminds me like if Weezer was cool, that this would be a good song that I would be like, oh yeah, okay, Weezer. But no, this is Lynam doing their feel. So like there are a couple songs here that do kind of sound like modern. It's not like something from straight from the 80s at all. Production's up to date. Production's good. And the writing and just there isn't really a guitar solo, I would say, that like blows me away for the most part. Like nothing like Vinnie Vincent or, like a guitar hero style. Like there are solos in these songs, but nothing that really like changes my life. But I think that's fine. That's good for because you know for the mainstream of 2006. Like to actually like people weren't worried about guitar solos at the time unless you are obviously Dragon Force in a couple years. But that is a little bit different. So this band from Alabama, which is actually kind of strange too, because like you don't think of Alabama when you think of like these kind of style bands, like your glamier, your more of a glam hard rock type feel. Not necessarily hair metal because they don't really look like hair metal, but they are in a part of that family. You could see like, oh yeah, they do have some influence of this genre, or of the subgenre. But no, a really good album. I guess like I said, Change Your Mind was a single for a reason. Really good. You know, By Your Side, good slower one. Sister Babylon, I would say check out. Definitely Letting Go if you like that kind of like Stained feel, because I always send this song to one of my friends that's a big fan of like the '90s stuff, and I say, hey, check this out. And then when he checked it out, he was like, yeah, that does really remind me of like Stain, and so, but that's cool too at the same time. But because it kind of brings the bridge between people that are a fan of different subgenres and are like, oh, okay, yeah, this is cool too. Let me check out this album or so forth. So really good stuff. Good album though. Really, I recommend it. Because it's more on the hard rock feel. Nothing really like metally on this album. Pretty, I would say, hard rock, not mainstream, but like just very digestible stuff. Especially for the time. So definitely, guys, check out Slave to the Machine from Lynam and check out some of their other stuff as well.
Hey, this is Michael Kelly Smith from Brittany Fox. You're watching the Krash Kourse Metal Show. Rock on.
Alrighty, guys, we are moving here to our second pick. We are going to go with the one band that I was mentioning earlier about that were from the golden era of the 80s and a part of that scene. We're going to go with English's, or I guess Welsh, technically, Tigertailz with Bezerk 2.0. So I do remember buying this around the time of its release, and I actually had to send for it. I think it did get shipped from overseas, if I remember correctly, because I was like in my early era 2006 collection, starting to collect and stuff, and starting to like order stuff on eBay and all that good stuff. But I was super impressed with this because I think the first song I heard was either Fallen Down, because I think they did have a music video for that, or I heard Do It Up. I cannot remember which one I heard first, but first things first about this album, you do have three of the three of the band members from the first Bezerk from 1990. And now I will say you got Hooker, Pepper, and Pepsi Tate. And then you obviously had Ace on the first Bezerk, but you have Blackout here on drums on this album. So that's the only difference. But I was super impressed with this. Like even today, it still sounds like a part two of Berserk, obviously. But it came out 14 years or 16 years later, and it's like, holy shit, they pulled this out of a time capsule, basically. Like, the production's nice and clean, but it still sounds very glammy, very good. Super impressed with that. Hooker sounds good on this. Like, everyone sounds really good on this album. Now, as far as like one of my favorite songs of Tigertailz in general and on this album is the second track, Do It Up. When that song comes on, it's the second track after an intro track. So technically the first track, I guess, real track. You're like, holy hell, is this album going to be like this the whole way through? And it pretty much is for the most part. Like, it has that feel, has that sound. And like, it just takes you right back to like 1990. Like, absolutely awesome. Like, I'll put this up against anything from the 80s that Tigertailz did, or like almost anybody did, because it's that good. Like, it really brings you back to that time, or to that feel in music, but just obviously 16 years later. So you do move on here to track number 3, One Beat of Your Heart. Really good poppy. They went back to the poppy feel. Like, this is a poppier, more melodic style, just like Berserk 1. It's literally its little brother that could have easily came out right after Berserk, in like 1992 or something. And it's just, I just cannot believe that something like this was done so well. The 4 track, I Believe, and that's a really good ballad. And you have TVOD, which is fine. Then you have Fallen Down, which is actually a really interesting song. Like, it kind of has like a darker feel, just different tempos throughout the song. Really good though. Like, good stuff. Good guitar solos throughout the whole album as well. Really good. Now I will say the second side of the album, from my perspective, is pretty not weak, but it's just not as good as side A. Still really good. Nothing really changes, I would say, as far as like the sound or like what they're trying to do, like the direction of these songs. Like, it's all relatively kind of like the same feel, and not sound the same, but just like, yes, we're here, we're making a part 2 to Berserk, and in 2006, and you're gonna like it. That's what the goal of this album was, and I think they certainly did a good job on that. So basically 11 full tracks, 12 technically, but like I said, with that opening intro track, can't complain for 2006, man. Like, this is like what other hair bands at the time of 2006 should have been striving for something that sounds similar to what brought you to greatness, during your golden era, during your heyday. But obviously when bands were releasing stuff in the early 2000s, the OG bands, the original run hair metal bands, they were releasing like weird stuff, different stuff. It was just like, are you trying to be like contemporary, but trying to feel old school and melodic at the same time, or like, what's going on here? And Tigertailz didn't have that question on this album. Certainly, like, this could easily been 2.0 2 years later from the original Berserk. So, guys, a couple songs. Check out Do It Up. That is easily, for me, the best song on this album, and one of Tigertailz' probably best songs, in my opinion. So if you want a ballad, I Believe is really good. And Falling Down is different too. Like, I think you'll be kind of surprised by like how Tigertailz sounds on that song. A little darker, a little more edgier, a little more serious, especially compared to some of the rest of the songs on here. But really good stuff, Falling Down. Check that out. And guys, check out Berserk 2.0. Easily could have been released after Berserk 1 2 years later. So great stuff there. Check that out. All right, so for our third band, we are going to be here still in 2006, and that is going to be Sweden's Vains of Jenna, Lit Up, Let Down.
Hell yes.
Now, obviously, as you can see, I had to break out the tour shirt when I saw them on the 2006 tour, 2007 tour with Poison and Rat. Awesome stuff. I went to go see Rat and Poison too, but I was like, I gotta go see Vains of Jenna. Like, these guys are badass. And obviously, like I said, around this is around the time when the renaissance of like the hair metal stuff was starting to come back, and even like traditional metal and such, like your Black Sabbaths and your Iron Maidens, shit like that too. Like the traditional stuff from the 80s was starting to become cool again. But like I said, when I think of this album and when I think of high school, because I would have been 14. So I was like a sophomore, I guess, technically in high school at that point, or freshman, even, and like when I heard this, I'm like, this shit is just badass. And even a couple of my buddies that were a fan of the stuff that I was a fan of, like, the hair metal and stuff, but they also had their own like metal sections and, subgenres that they were into. Uh, they even enjoyed a good amount of songs off of this album. So you have here 8 total studio tracks, but you do get 2 extra acoustics, studio acoustics of 2 of. So they have No One's Gonna Do It For You acoustic and Set It Off acoustic, which in the album of the first 8 tracks, it's an electric version. So you just get 2 extra tracks, which are acoustics, which both versions are awesome in their own right. But yeah, so like I was saying, like in high school, like I was like, now, yes, I compare this album to my generation's like Appetite for Destruction, because like these guys were so sleazy. They were like the 2006 version of Guns N' Roses. And up until that point, because I remember when Guns N' Roses, no one really talked about Guns N' Roses. No one even knew what Appetite for Destruction was and stuff. So like, you know, because I get now, like within like the last 15 years, because Hair Metal Guru brought this up and he was like, Appetite for Destruction has always been the new generation's Appetite for Destruction, but like I don't know, would somewhat disagree, because like when I was in school, now obviously I'm in one school, not in every school around the country, so like maybe so. I mean, Appetite for Destruction is the best selling album of all time, debut album of all time, so definitely it has staying power, no doubt, with any generation. But I don't remember people. I was the only one with a Guns N' Roses shirt on in high school, and not many other people even knew who they were. Let alone repping a Appetite for Destruction shirt or just yelling out at the top of their lungs, "Appetite for Destruction." So that's why I say, like, and of the new era, like of the second wave of sleaze metal, or like the renaissance that was going on with this over in Sweden and Europe, in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and even like with Dirty Penny and Wild Street and such like that over here in America. This was the band that I would say would be really, really close to Guns N' Roses, like the sound and just the attitude and their look and everything like that. And they put on a great live show too, because they were on Bam Margera's label for this, because they did release. They had like a demo. They had like a lot of demo tape or an EP or something like that before this, and then Bam Margera found out about him and signed him to his little record company. So definitely pretty cool in that, right? Because even Bam Margera was there at the show when I saw Vains of Jenna live in Reading, Pennsylvania. So not too far from where Bam's hometown is. So that was just cool to see Bam there on the side, like jamming with Vains of Jenna with the rest of us. So that just badass stuff. Okay, so for the album itself, you did have a music video here, and that was No One's Gonna Do It For You. A quick pack a punch song, like very, even Vains of Jenna even has a little bit of a punky feel to them. They're sleazy, not like Love Hate, but like have an element of that. But great guitar solos here, and even Lizzie, the vocalist here, he went on to still be in a current band today after he left Vains of Jenna, called The Cruel Intentions, which I was sadly never able to really pick up any of the physical stuff, but they're still active, thankfully. But yeah, so Lizzie only stayed for this album and then one album afterward, which is okay. I mean, which is good, for 2009 purposes, but it doesn't match the greatness what they did on the debut here. So for this album, you have the title track, Live Up, Let Down, like a great ballad about like drugs and stuff, but the guitar solo is so methodical and slow, but like just absolutely moving. Great stuff there. Hard to Be Vain, one of my favorite songs when I first heard this album, and one of my favorite songs to this day. When it still comes on, I think go back to that time in high school, and I'm like, God, yeah, that shit was just awesome. Like great stuff there. But when Lizzie sings, he has this attitude to him, and he's not the greatest singer. No, it's raspy. It is, you know, to a certain point, there's an element punk, and that's part of that element punk. That was what I was explaining about. Like his voice, he sometimes he goes into a clean feel on certain things. He does that more on the second album, I would say, than this album. But you know, on the acoustic tracks, you can kind of hear him bring out the clean versions of his voice a little bit. So, but no, like the final track set it off, baby. Like, oh my god, like really good. Like Lizzie's just kind of talking in some parts throughout the song. And it's just like, oh god, like this is just dripping with sleaze. Like Guns N' Roses wish they could release something after Appetite for Destruction that could like match this. Like it. I know. I mean, Appetite for Destruction is great, but like what Guns N' Roses did after Appetite for Destruction is very hit and miss, in my opinion.
What?
I think Vain Jenna kind of like caught lightning in a bottle here, and Bam Margera was there for it. Like they got signed, they had a little bit of recognition because like Bam had them on one of his shows, like his Bam's wedding or whatever, and TV show, and so they had a little bit of play, with people that were popular at the time and shows that were popular at the time, but it just never really went as far as I thought it could, and at the same time, like this music just wasn't in either, because like at the time, like I said, you had like screamo stuff, you had very heavier stuff like Children of Bodom, Cradle of Filth, like stuff like that was really taking up the not mainstream, but like of the popular metal bands and sound at the time. So like this stuff was certainly more underground than anything. But I remember I bought this at Walmart. I bought this CD at Walmart, and what the hell. So like I know I could talk about Vain Jenna all day. Like they are one of my favorite bands from when I was in high school, as far as like a new band. Not from the '80s or early '90s. And it's just a shame they couldn't stick it out for longer than 2 albums with all together, well, of the original guys. But we never would have got Cruel Intentions then either. Listen to it because it is certainly deserved one of the best albums of 2006 in my opinion, and hell, even maybe that decade, quite honestly. So yes, certainly check out Vain Jenna, Lit Up, Let Down. Bam Margera didn't sign up for no reason, and it's just absolutely awesome. And they got a great look as well. And I cannot say enough of Vain Jenna, and this album will always be a top 25 album for me of all genres, of my life. So definitely one that I stand behind, support, all the whole 9 yards. So certainly, guys. Okay, so of the songs, definitely check out the single. No One's Gonna Do It For You. Really good. Hard to Be Vain. Really good. But if you want the ballad type feel, Lit Up, Let Down. Absolutely great stuff. And then Set It Off for an extra. So, but the whole album's really good. So you won't go wrong there with that. Then we also had Tigertailz, Berserk 2.0. Could have easily came after the great Bezerk #1 in 1990. So check that out as well. And then we also had Lynam, another band that was not as hard or as sleazy as Vain Jenna, but they had that more of a mainstream feel to them. They had that very easily digestible to the main public, and more melodic feel to them. Great stuff, though. Slave to the Machine. Great stuff there. So, guys, 2006 was not all lost. I know we like to talk about all of the great albums, and there were plenty of great albums in the early 90s and 80s of the golden era, hair metal, sleaze metal, just metal in general. But 2006 is not a lost year. I'm going to be bringing out a couple more years from these mid 2000s and 2010s, I guess. And there's certainly stuff that just never got even found to begin with. A lot of unknowns and just obviously a lot of forgottens too. So definitely, guys, let me know what you think of these 3 bands.
Talk to me.
If you had heard anything from not just these albums, but just from these bands in general, quite interested to hear what you have to say about that. But guys, if you like what we're doing here, bringing you all this forgotten and unknown bands, music, metal, albums, everything, click the like button, and also chill with us some Friday nights because we do go live now and we talk about all this stuff: hair metal, sleaze metal, talking about thrash metal, power metal, anything metal. It's just a chill night to start the weekend. Grab a drink, grab a snack. It's just all fun. Just to kick the weekend off. That's what we want here on this channel. We want to bring the community back to heavy metal because obviously the live scene isn't really giving to us anymore like it was back in the golden age. And just even the genre in and of itself, we need the community back. That's what's missing. That's the charm of what's missing with heavy metal, I feel, in my opinion, what I see around here and just throughout the country and just throughout the world as well. So, guys, thank you so much for watching. Stay out of that collateral damage. And if you guys enjoyed this video, check out another one of our episodes from the Forgotten Album series right here.
Yeah, I wrote that. It's called I Want to Rock Your Body. And then in parentheses it says to the break of dawn.